Here's something that might shock you. One of the most expensive movie disasters of 1998 is making a comeback, and it's stirring up all kinds of nostalgic feelings, both good and cringeworthy. Cast your mind back to the frigid movie landscape of early 1998. Picture this. For an entire quarter of the year, Hollywood's biggest blockbusters were getting absolutely demolished by a single cinematic juggernaut. James Cameron's Titanic had essentially become an unsinkable fortress at the box office, ruthlessly crushing every competitor that dared to challenge its supremacy. High-profile casualties included Michael Crichton's expensive adaptation Sphere, the eagerly anticipated fugitive follow-up, U.S. Marshals, and what would later become the beloved cult phenomenon, Deep Rising. These weren't just minor setbacks, these were massive, budget-busting flops that left studio executives wondering if anything could possibly topple Cameron's maritime masterpiece. But here's where it gets controversial. The film that finally managed to end Titanic's remarkable 15-week stranglehold on theaters wasn't some critically acclaimed masterpiece or Oscar contender. Instead, it was Lost in Space, a sci-fi spectacle that many consider one of the most polarizing blockbusters of its era. While Lost in Space did manage to claim the #1 position during its debut weekend in April 1998, calling it a genuine success would be stretching the truth considerably. New Line Cinema had invested what was considered an astronomical sum at the time, approximately $80 million, expecting this modernized take on the beloved 1960s television series to launch an entire multimedia franchise. The studio's ambitious vision involved multiple sequels, merchandise lines, and extensive brand expansion. Unfortunately, reality delivered a harsh wake-up call when the film barely managed to recoup its investment, even after factoring in international box office revenues and home video sales. And this is the part most people miss. Despite being largely forgotten by mainstream audiences today, Lost in Space has found new life through Arrow Video's latest 4K UHD release. This boutique distributor has rapidly earned a reputation as the genre film equivalent of the prestigious Criterion Collection, specializing in giving cult classics and overlooked gems the deluxe treatment they deserve. Their recent partnership with Warner Home Video has resulted in stunning re-releases of numerous 80s and 90s treasures, including Sylvester Stallone's Cobra, Sean Connery's space thriller Outland, the shark-infested Deep Blue Sea, Al Pacino's controversial Cruising, and the comic book adaptation Spawn. Revisiting Lost in Space today provides a fascinating glimpse into a pivotal moment in cinema history. This production represented one of the earliest attempts by a major studio to rely heavily on computer-generated imagery for its visual effects work. However, even during its original theatrical run, this technological approach sparked heated debates among both critics and audiences. Many viewers, including this writer, left theaters feeling disappointed by the cartoonish quality of the digital effects, particularly the CGI character known as Blarp, which seemed like an unfortunate preview of what George Lucas would later inflict upon Star Wars fans with Jar Jar Binks. The timing certainly didn't help matters, with Lucas actively filming The Phantom Menace during the same period. Audiences were naturally comparing every science fiction spectacle to the anticipated Star Wars prequel. Yet Lost in Space possesses several redeeming qualities that become more apparent with the passage of time. The film was helmed by Stephen Hopkins, a director who specialized in crafting inventive genre entertainment throughout the 1990s. Hopkins had previously demonstrated his skills with Predator 2, the underrated thriller Judgment Night, the explosive Blown Away, and the adventure epic The Ghost and the Darkness. Interestingly, despite Hopkins' obvious talent for creating entertaining cinema, most of his projects failed to connect with mainstream audiences during their initial releases, making him something of a patron saint for overlooked filmmakers. The casting choices reveal the financial constraints and creative compromises that shaped the production. With the majority of the budget allocated to expensive digital effects, New Line Cinema could afford only one major star name above the title. They wisely selected Gary Oldman to portray the villainous Dr. Smith, capitalizing on his reputation as Hollywood's most reliable antagonist, following memorable performances in Bram Stoker's Dracula, Leon the Professional, Air Force One, and The Fifth Element. The role of family patriarch John Robinson went to the late William Hurt, whose casting represents one of the film's most questionable decisions. While Hurt had been the most celebrated leading man of the 1980s, his career had significantly declined following a well-publicized struggle with alcoholism. The part clearly demanded someone with the rugged charisma of Harrison Ford or the commanding presence of Alec Baldwin, rather than Hurt's more introspective approach. Ironically, Hurt would later reinvent himself as one of cinema's most compelling character actors in films like A History of Violence. The 1990s popularity of the television phenomenon Friends led to Matt LeBlanc's unexpected casting as action hero Major Don West. Surprisingly, LeBlanc proved quite capable in the role's physical demands and brought genuine charm to the character's heroic moments. However, his romantic scenes with Heather Graham's Judy Robinson suffered whenever he unconsciously slipped back into his familiar Joey Tribbiani persona, creating jarring tonal shifts that undermined the film's dramatic credibility. Unfortunately, the female characters received significantly less attention from the screenplay. Mimi Rogers, playing matriarch Maureen Robinson, was essentially reduced to concerned reaction shots, while Heather Graham's considerable talents were largely wasted on an underwritten role. Young Lacey Chabert's performance as Penny Robinson proved particularly grating, though this likely reflected the weak material rather than the actress's abilities. In contrast, Jack Johnson delivered an engaging portrayal of Will Robinson, benefiting from substantial screen time alongside both Gary Oldman and the film's iconic robot. Notably, veteran voice actor Dick Tufeld was the only performer from the original television series invited to reprise his role, providing continuity for longtime fans. One of the production's most bizarre behind-the-scenes stories involves Jared Harris, who would later gain acclaim for his work in Chernobyl. Harris appears as an older version of Will Robinson, but his entire performance was dubbed in post-production. The reason for this unusual decision reveals the creative chaos that plagued the film's development. In the original script, Harris's character was supposed to have been raised by Gary Oldman's British-accented Dr. Smith, leading Harris to naturally perform the role with his own British accent. However, test audiences found this backstory confusing, forcing the filmmakers to re-record Harris's dialogue with an American accent to match the younger Will Robinson. Despite its numerous flaws and commercial disappointments, Arrow Video's comprehensive Lost in Space collection offers surprising entertainment value for both nostalgic viewers and curious newcomers. One unexpectedly delightful aspect of revisiting the film involves rediscovering its quintessentially 1990s soundtrack, which perfectly captures the era's electronic music trends. The compilation features Crystal Method's infectious Busy Child, along with contributions from electronic music pioneers Juno Reactor, Apollo 440, and other techno luminaries who defined the decade's sound. The 4K UHD transfer showcases impressive technical quality, though it certainly doesn't hide the limitations of the film's visual effects work. Paradoxically, this technological honesty might actually enhance the viewing experience, allowing audiences to appreciate Lost in Space as a fascinating time capsule from the early days of digital filmmaking. But here's what I want to know. Are we being too harsh on movies like Lost in Space? Should we celebrate these ambitious failures as stepping stones toward the spectacular blockbusters we enjoy today? Or do they deserve the criticism they received? Is there value in preserving and upgrading films that were considered disappointments? Or should we focus our attention on genuinely great cinema instead? What do you think? Will you be adding this controversial 4K release to your collection? Or does Lost in Space deserve to remain lost in the depths of movie history? Share your thoughts and let us know whether you believe this maligned sci-fi spectacle deserves a second chance, or if some movies should stay buried in the past.